Ooh, it's a voice behind a picture. Oh no. Where's my camera? Hey, give me 1 second to fix my camera here. Okay, well, I guess I'll be using a different camera today. It's a little unexpected. All right, sorry for the delay. It's a little weird. Some of the video might be a little weird today, so I apologize. Not a great start. But I guess this is entitled Embarrassing Things. So here's what's going on today. I am going to play some songs from my first album, and what happened was I was deployed or activated while I was in the Army and went to Texas for a year in 2002. And I hadn't really written a lot of songs at that point, and most of the songs that I'd written at that point probably weren't worth recording. But essentially, I wrote a bunch of songs over the summer when I first got there, and decided to put them on a record with a friend of mine, a guy named Barefoot Larry, who played bass, and a guy named Robin Howell that played mandolin on most of the songs. And then, well, they played on about half the songs each, so there's at least one of them on most of the album. But I played some of the other instruments, and the album was maybe a little longer than it should have been. But the first one I'm going to start off with is a song that an awful lot of people liked when I first wrote it, and I used to like it when I first wrote it, and then I don't know if outgrow it is the right word for it, but it's very representative of the kind of music I played when I recorded this album, and very unrepresentative of the kind of music that I decided to start playing when I started the band Midway Fair. So this is a song called Green Mountain Road, and among other things, this is it's the only one I know for sure was recorded by someone, even though I never got a copy of the cover. But I know a couple people had covered it, and also my grandfather played it at his funeral, and I couldn't make it to the funeral because at the time I had a job where I thought if I took any time off whatsoever for any reason, it was going to lose me the job, and then they ended up laying us all off anyway. So I really regret not making it to the funeral, but apparently they played the song there so that I could be there in some capacity. All the songs today are going to be in a similar vein to this. They're all going to be this kind of like bluegrassy type thing that I was doing at the time. So here we go. I had to transcribe all these. That's how long it's been since I played them. It was a warm summer night just after rain when I saw her picking roses on the hill, with stars in her eyes and the moon on the wane, and her smile from that night's in my heart still. It's where I met my wild mountain rose, out on that green mountain road, on that soft summer night in Kentucky moonlight, out on that green mountain road. She was the fairest flower that ever I'd seen, and I swore she'd forever have my heart. And we laughed and smiled, and she gave me her hand, and I knew then that we'd never part. It's there I met my wild mountain rose, out on that green mountain road, on that soft summer night in Kentucky moonlight, out on that green mountain road. Times that I remember that night, so long ago in those old hills, and we dance in the dew beneath the starlight, and her smile sets my heart leaping still. It's there I met my wild mountain rose, out on that green mountain road, on that soft summer night in Kentucky moonlight, out on that green mountain road, on that soft summer night in Kentucky moonlight, out on that green mountain road. So yeah, there it is. For a long time that was going to be the title track of the album until pretty much until I decided that I wanted to record Stephen Foster's Hard Times, which I've covered that on the channel several times, and also complained about YouTube thinking that it's copyrighted, which is just, so the next song is one that actually did get played by Midway Fair in the very, very early days. So after I got back to Baltimore and discovered that folk music was not a thing in Baltimore, really, and it's weird saying that now because a lot of the artists that I know are very popular in Baltimore. Folk music kind of really took off here. after I decided to stop doing it. I'm pretty sure that the way I can make anything happen is that I don't do it. I said I was going to talk about some of the songwriting. So there's a pretty frequent thing when I was going through these songs and I was transcribing the lyrics that I did write some catchy choruses. I didn't reuse. I didn't overly reuse some of the chord progressions, but since I was composing pretty much entirely in this very restrictive format of sounding like old folk songs, that it does limit what I could do musically. But there were a few things that were pretty unusual, and this one I recorded this with a slightly different feel than the way I'm going to play it. But in 2005, when I first started playing with Mike Ward, who played piano on the first Midway Fair album, he had the first album because that was the only recorded material I had at the time, and he really liked this song and wanted to play it. And he basically gave me the arrangement that I'm going to play, and it's not hugely different. It's got the same chords and the same tune, but he just changed the feel to more of this I guess slow country thing instead of the bluegrass 2 feel. And another interesting thing about this, I hadn't written a lot of poetry. I was mostly writing prose at this point in my life, and so not only was I inexperienced as a songwriter, but I was also a little inexperienced as a poetry writer. But one thing I did seem to do with a lot of the early songs I wrote is that they're basically a sonnet form. So this has one of those 2-line choruses that I tended to write in those days. Not a lot of songs survived, but this was one of the ones that survived to actually get recorded. And Robin Howell, who I mentioned played mandolin, actually played guitar on. He played the lead guitar on this, but I don't really do it exactly the way we did it then anyway. So the fact that I've never learned his acoustic lead guitar part, I guess is okay if I'm not going to play it that way. But here we go. This is called "All I Can See of Her Tonight." Must have been 1,000 degrees at night. The lighthouse beacon flashed along the shore. Her hand in mine on the Chesapeake, I swore I'd love her through the night and evermore. But all I can see of her tonight are the taillights heading south on 95. And broken promises don't mean that much when you come to find you've heard them all your life. But the thing I came to realize this time, of all the promises kept, the least were mine. But all I can see of her tonight are the taillights heading south on 95. without her here. She needn't justify her right to leave. Broken hearts will mend with time and heal. Still I have no wish to cause her grief. All I can see of her tonight are the taillights heading south on 95. All I can see of her tonight are the taillights heading south on 95. Yeah, so it mentions the Chesapeake and Route 95, which, you know, I guess moving away for a year kind of did make me a little homesick. The next one, for a while, this was actually one of my favorite. This was one of my favorites to play at the time that I recorded this album. Although I don't really think anyone else ever had anything to say about it, but. It's called I'll Always Wish, and I mean, this is another breakup song, so it's 2 in a row here. It was a lot of relationship songs, as some people call them, and one of the songs that I didn't get around to really reworking was not a relationship song, so one of the things about going back to looking at this album is just like how far removed the subject matter is from what I would be writing about later. The lyrics aren't dark, which is really my modus operandi now. Sun's starting to move. I had to turn on the light. The lyrics aren't as dark. And I don't know. It's just not the sort of song I would play anymore. But I do think actually the chorus is very good. Except for I said I was going to talk about some of the songwriting. Except for there's a couple syllables in the song that when I say them they sort of run together and sound like a couple different words. So in this case, the chorus is. The leaves turn brown in the winter and fall. Rain has come pouring down. The world moves on without us all, my dear. But I'll always wish you'd stayed around. And someone actually commented at the time, and it was like the day after I recorded this that I went to an open mic or something and played this song, and someone said that line sounds like you're saying without a saw, like the thing you cut wood with, And I was like, wow, I just recorded this, and I wish someone had told me that beforehand. But it was just one of those things where as you get more mature as a songwriter, you start listening to yourself a little more carefully, I guess, and listening a little better to some of the scanning. But this one has one of those. You know, as I said I like the chorus, and I'm not trying to be too hard on 20-year-old John here, but this is another one where if now I would have been a lot more careful about the sound of the lyrics and the scan of some of the lines. So, but again. I like the tune. I like the chorus. So this was one of the ones that I went back and retranscribed. I'll always wish. Walked in the snow for a while this morning, and in the rain your footprints slowly melt. The air was cold and not as much so as our farewell. The leaves turn brown in the winter and fall, rain has come pouring down. The world moves on without us all, my dear, but I'll always wish you'd stayed around. I don't know the first time that I saw your eyes through the sun was a single sight then, with the moon and the ocean never looked quite so gray, and the sun never shone so bright again. And the world and the leaves turn brown in the winter and fall, the rain has come pouring down. The world moves on without us all, my dear, but I'll always wish you'd stayed around. Walked, you and I, but the moonlight's never quite as bright as it seems, and it always makes me wonder, my love, that you love me only in my dreams. The leaves turn brown in the winter and fall, rain has come pouring down. The world moves on without us all, my dear, but I'll always wish you'd stayed around. The leaves turn brown in the winter and fall, rain has come pouring down at times. The world moves on without us all, my dear, but I'll always wish that you'd been mine. Alrighty, so I think it's time to play my weekly folk song. This is a folk song that I played a lot around that time, and some of the way the chords work, I did in fact lift for the first song I played. It's folk music, so it's you know, you're free to do that. This is a song called Cindy, and I don't remember where I first learned it. I learned much later that it was one of Pete Seeger's, I don't want to say signature songs, but it was a song that Pete Seeger did a lot, and the version that I know sounds pretty different from the way Pete Seeger does it. So it's a lot faster and it's a lot less straight, but you know, straight time, like, has a little bit more swing to it. But this was a dance hall song, so, you know, think banjo and fiddle type thing, and it has a lot of the, let's say, there's these stanzas that reappear in tons of folk songs. They're sort of these like standardized lyrics. So some of the verses of this appear in songs like Shady Grove, and a lot of other songs that are really sort of glorified fiddle tunes, something to play for people to dance. So the lyrics aren't the focus of the song, but I kind of liked the way this one used them because it's a little more, it's got a little bit more of a storytelling aspect to it. So in the song, you know, she's into him and he ain't into her. to see my Cindy, she lives way down south. She's so sweet, the honeybees swarm around her mouth. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, I'll marry you someday. Cindy hugged and kissed me, wrung her hands and cried, said I was the prettiest thing that ever lived or died. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, I'll marry you someday. I wish I was an apple hanging on a tree, and every time that Cindy passed, she'd take a bite of me. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, I'll marry you someday. Peaches in the summertime and apples in the fall. If I can't have her all the time, I won't have none at all. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, Cindy, Cindy, I'll marry you someday. I wish banjos stayed in tune for more than half a song. All right. I guess one of the other things that recording the record allowed me to do, I recorded a couple of my dad's songs. So I've played a few of his songs on the string before, but this one, I haven't revisited this really since I recorded the album. I only played it live a few times, but it was one of those things where I was never really happy with my arrangement of it, and I still don't know if I've got the right one, but I decided to go back and do a new arrangement for this one. This is a song called "Sweet Island Girl." I've been told that he was told you can't mention you can't mention teeth in a song when he wrote this. So apparently at some point it mentioned her teeth or something, which I'm not entirely certain where that was, but this is one of those kind of nautical themed songs, I guess. I once had the love of a sweet island girl, her smile was like sunshine, her eyes were black pearls. She loved me so deeply, I feared I would drown. A man born to wander, no love can tie down. Blow, ho, blow, you southern trade wind, blow me on back to those sweet arms again. Night after night I can still see her there. Warm tropic breezes blowing raven black hair, her voice floating out over the sea. Come back, my love, oh, come back to me. wasted her love on this young foolish boy, who cast it away as a child does his toy. Though I promised her someday to her I'd return, the sea is a mistress no sailor can spurn. So blow, oh blow, you southern trade wind, blow me on back to those sweet arms again. Night after night I can still see her there, warm tropic breezes blowing raven black hair, her voice floating out over the sea. Come back my love, oh come back to me. I've tossed all about on the great ocean's wave, nothing I've saved, though I've worked like a slave. Squandered my money on rum and on whores, never been back to that fair island shores. Blow, ho, blow, you southern trade wind, blow me on back to those sweet arms again. Night after night I can still see her there, warm tropic breezes blowing raven black hair, her voice floating out over the sea. Come back my love, oh come back to me. Now tired of this life on the high rolling sea, I'm setting my course on the southerly breeze. So hoist up the anchor, the sails now unfurl, sail me on back to my sweet island girl. Blow, oh blow, you southern trade wind, blow me on back to those sweet arms again. Night after night I can still see her there, warm tropic breezes blowing raven black hair, her voice floating out over the sea. Come back my love, oh come back to me. Blow, oh blow, you southern trade wind, blow me on back to those sweet arms again. Night after night I can still see her there, warm tropic breezes blowing raven black hair, her voice floating out over the sea. Come back my love, oh come back to me. Yeah, I wish I'd had time to kind of go back and rework a lot more of the songs from this album, but part of it is, 20 years on, they're kind of, I'm not great at revisiting songs in general, so I tend to try and work as hard as I possibly can to get it right the first time, and revisiting songs for me is always very, very difficult, and this one, I mean, it's a relatively simple change in the song, but it took me a surprisingly long amount of time to force the old version out far enough that I could redo it. I've got one more song. So this one is another one that has actually been played by Midway Fair, and this is one of the songs. This is the song on the album. It was my favorite at the time that I wrote it. It was my favorite at the time that we recorded the album, and it was my favorite song on the album after we recorded it. And I really don't think anyone else had the same kind of emotional connection to it. But this is, I mentioned before that moving to Texas for a year made me very homesick, and this was one of the last songs I wrote for the album, and I was definitely feeling very homesick at the time I wrote this. There's a little bit more to the philosophy behind it than just that, but I don't know. It's one of the ones that I'm a little surprised I haven't played it in several years. But we did actually play it at several shows after Midway Fair recorded the first album. So this one survived a lot longer than the others from the album as part of the set list. And yeah, I mean, as I said, I still think this one's a good song. And, you know, even a blind pig finds a truffle now and then, I suppose. It's called the Highlands. Poking the things. All right. The sun rose on the highway on my way home today, and I squinted to see the fading lines. These dead running flatlands are a long way from home, but there's still something to recognize. I hear the other engines rush by along their way, and for them this is all there ever was. But in the dance of the sunlight and the glint of the road, I hope that there's more than what this is. And I wish I was back in the Highlands, in the hills where my fathers were born. I'd rise with the sun, and I'd live in the hands and the soul of those who've gone before. And I hang from my mirror an old black and white of the place where I think is my home. The ivy on the crumbling old wall along the heights, silhouetted against the blackened stones. And I wish I was back in the Highlands, the hills where my fathers were born. And I'd rise with the sun, and I'd live in the hands, in the soul of those who've gone before. I've seen too much in the rising of the moon, in the fading light of the morning star. Down the long road through the flatlands I've run, chasing down the sun in my old car. And I wish I was back in the Highlands, in the hills where my fathers were born. I'd rise with the sun, and I'd live in the hands and the soul of those who've gone before. And I'd rise with the sun, and I'd live in the hands and the soul of those who've gone before. Well, I hope that everyone out there enjoyed this little trip of, I guess nostalgia for me. I think it is worth revisiting past work. Again, not trying to be too hard on 20-year-old John, but I'm a naturally embarrassed person. This is my last solo weekly Saturday matinee. So I've been doing the weekly matinees for a little over 4 months now, or 5 months. I started them at the end of November, when it was still very, very difficult to think about booking live shows, but that's going to start happening. Also, this room that I'm in gets very, very hot during the summer and very uncomfortable. So, inviting friends to come sit in a sauna with me might be I don't know that I'm that good of a friend. But I won't completely stop doing the live streams, and I think once the winter happens and everyone's kind of forced back inside, I might go back to inviting guests over. But next week I've got my friend and bandmate Joe Scala, and we also write a lot of songs together, so we're going to be doing as many co-writes as we think we can get away with. We've been writing at least 1 or 2 a year since 2012, and so we do have a lot of songs. I don't know if we'll get every single co-write we've done. There's one that I know was an experimental track that would be very, very difficult for us to pull off live, but I'm pretty excited about several of them, including this year's co-write, which I think was a really good one. And we've done some lyric swaps. If you've been listening to these streams for a long time, you might remember a song that we did called Stony Run that he took some of my lyrics and turned them into something immensely better, and he gave me a song called I Am a Brigand, which was based on one of my favorite books, The Baron in the Trees by Italo Calvino. And I'm always really pleased with what we come up with every year, so I think that's going to be a very good stream. And I've also saved a couple of my favorite Midway Fair songs that Joe does really good harmonies on, so I'm really, really thrilled to have him back on the stream. And next week, I'm going to be if you're in Baltimore, I'm going to be solo at Mick O'Shea's. I'll be playing a mix of my originals and covers and some traditional songs that I do, so not radically different from the stream, except that there'll be a lot more pop and rock music thrown in. And then at the end of April, I have the first full band Midway Fair show at a place called Monument City Brewing. And the announcements for these have all gone out if you're on the mailing list, but if you're not, and this is, you're just tuning in casually and you're from Baltimore, I'd love to see somebody at the show, especially if we've never met in person. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. The awkward moment when I click on the picture and continue talking and you can hear me. Oh no, it's gonna go mute. No!